Good morning, everyone. My name is Kerrie Racicot, and I am with Tahoe Truckee Vacation Properties in Truckee in North Lake Tahoe, California. And I'm also a board member with VRNation. So welcome and thank you for joining us. And for those of you that are new here, VRNation is a national organization with roots in the Pacific Northwest, originally founded in 2010. And our mission really is to elevate the short-term rental industry through education, networking, and advocacy with a strong supportive community of property managers. So we host a bi-weekly webinar series and a weekly podcast designed to keep you learning, growing, and connecting with others who truly get and understand our business. But today we are welcoming Taylor Miller. Taylor is with Beyond, which is a revenue management and vacation rental technology platform. And she's going to walk us through what top performing operators are doing differently this summer. So Taylor, take it away and welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Kerrie. I appreciate it. Just to give a little bit of background, I am working with Beyond. I cover the Southeast region, but we'll be covering kind of the wide scope of the US today at a high level. But I've been in the industry for a couple of years and switched over to taking on this role with Beyond. So diving into the revenue management side has been very interesting, and it's nice to know all facets of the business as well, too. So let's get into it. Oh, there we go. All right. So I'm gonna carry unless you
I
want to
kind of,
this
I
one.
kind of
You kind
mentioned
of
it a
already
bit.
did
Yeah,
it. Yeah. Let's
jumped
get to this
ahead.
one. So the agenda today is really just going to be talking about what's the state of summer at the moment. I know we're kind of in a middle ground. Each region has a different, version of summer. But what we're seeing right now, three habits for this summer, and how this could potentially show up in your workflow. And then we'll save some time for some Q&A as well, too. All right. So one thing that we've noticed is discipline is definitely going to be important about what summer is bringing. Actually, I think in any season, but speaking of summer specifically. So one thing that obviously has been standing out year over year is going to be the shrinking booking windows. So when guests are finalizing 3 to 4 weeks out, some people are really making it last second. I know this July and or May and April have turned out to be a little bit different for my groups in the Southeast. Um, and really just kind of, I would say, reflecting back on what's going on in the world with gas prices, and then people saying, "Oh, screw it, it's the summer, so let's go for the weekend." One thing that's really important to understand is, when to discount and how well we need to be setting up those discounts for booking windows for what's happening and overall guest behavior there. The second thing that we've got on here is demand compression. So peak weeks, and also peak days. I want to make that a little bit more specific. I think that one thing about each day during the summer is demand is not the same across the board. I'm sure everyone has their own demand graphs that are showing occupancy levels in their area, and it's really not a flat line. It's going to be coming across every single day, changing on what day guests want to come visit. So pricing flat across the full summer definitely leaves money on the table for the stronger peak days, but also leaves occupancy on the table for those days that, people aren't necessarily compelled to go. But with the right price at the right time, you can definitely snag some extra guests at the end of your summertime. The last point that we have on here is ADR pressure. So supply growth and reactive pricing are increasing rate pressure. And what we're kind of outlining here is operators holding pricing discipline will outperform. And that's really just understanding your market, understanding that I know that, there's more and more supply of properties in your area, but understanding how to properly price and understanding the guest behavior, what's driving certain properties to be booked versus other ones, is really going to make you guys stand out as well too. Awesome. Next up, the state of summer. So we did break it up by East Coast, West Coast, and Central. Wanted to start with East Coast because we think that, this is the strongest market overall right now. This is everyone's high season. I might be the only one. I'm living in Miami and everyone's leaving Miami because it is the hottest it's ever been. But from an occupancy standpoint, we're seeing this stay high, right? And consistent, concentrated on the weekends and holidays. Those are obviously going to be big kickers. Just had July 4th happen, so I hope everyone survived. And then if we drop it down into ADR, we're seeing a lift in ADR during those peak windows, but it's variable dependent on the days and weekends, what's happening, things like that. So keeping a good balance between those high demand weekends versus those not as in demand areas is super key. Booking pace right now, we're seeing that there are people that are planning in advance, especially on, my East Coast. I'm originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. So anywhere in South Carolina, North Carolina beaches, we're seeing those larger booking windows for more family-oriented trips, longer vacations, especially surrounding those prime dates. But then again, we're seeing that be a little bit more variable as well when it's not around those holidays. Now, the last part on here is talking about where operators are focusing is protecting the ADR. Again, understanding guest behavior, understanding what days and events are driving demand are going to be your biggest way of protecting ADR during those important times, but also understanding where we can let things go a little bit when we're not seeing the same, I would say, the same pattern, essentially. Kerrie, I saw you get off mute. Did you have a question?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah. But I will say, being on the West Coast, I can attest that these patterns are also what we're experiencing. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I guess before I get into the West Coast side of things, like just to ask you a question, not to flip it around on you. I
Mm-hmm.
know I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if I'm supposed to be asking questions. How are you guys keeping on top of what's happening right now in the market for your summertime at the moment? What stats are you looking at? Like, are you looking at reports, things like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for us, it's typically pacing. Looking at pacing reports to see, you know, trying to understand if the market's like softening or where it's softening. So it's not just pacing for our entire portfolio. It's pacing like niching down to, specific subsets. And like your ADR comment here with guests paying for scarcity and destination quality, that can be within the microclimate of a market.
Hmm.
So like lakefront versus, non-lakefront, or like the top of a mountain versus mid-mountain. So really kind of getting more nuanced with pricing, and whenever you have tools that are able to accommodate that and be dynamic, not just across your portfolio or across your market, but within your subsets, I think really helps with that. And yeah, and then also, I know this isn't a tech thing, it is like the human thing, but just talking to like other operators in your market, I'm a huge proponent of just what we call like co-opetition, and just like finding out what other people are experiencing, tapping into your DMO, because especially if you have like a really small portfolio, it maybe doesn't indicate a lot for you, but then, Beyond and other tools also can give you market stats that are relevant to how you're going to price. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's one thing, especially like what you're talking about in terms of, understanding how everyone else is feeling and what's actually happening and having that conversation with property managers in the area. But also when I just got back from a conference in San Diego, and that was a big topic of conversation, was like we have very niche markets and people are
Mm-hmm.
going out of their way. One thing that we're able to do is when we're looking at market data and we're looking at neighborhood data, pacing, whatever the case is there, what our team does is we sit with you and level set to make sure that the data that we're pulling for the listings is accurate to the neighborhood that it's located in, right? Because we could have
Mm-hmm.
a massive
Mm-hmm.
market. But there are neighborhoods within the market, so we can make sure that when we're giving you or providing data, you guys have a direct knowledge on, hey, I know exactly where this is, and it's not smacking me in with the whole city of San Diego, right? We're
Right.
looking at this specific neighborhood to make sure that what we're giving you is accurate. We have our revenue management team actually has their hands on it to make sure that if you are in a niche market and in a niche area, that we're actually catering to the market that you're in. Again, just to make sure
Hmm.
that you guys have the most accurate data so you can be proactive versus reactive in these markets as well, too.
Hmm. Yeah.
Now, for Central, this is definitely going to be a little bit more different, right? A little bit mixed between leisure driven, I'm assuming holidays as well in here. And, it's not as aggressive unless there is a major event happening from what we're seeing for the Central US. If from a booking pace perspective, uneven, people are booking a little bit later. And again, it's going to be a little bit more behind event and drive demand sensitive. So really focusing on those holidays, really focusing on those events are where you can really capitalize during the summer period. And that's exactly what we say from where operators are focusing is reacting quickly to events. And again, I
Hmm.
think reacting isn't the word that I want to say. It's more or less being proactive about the events that are happening. So staying on top of those to make sure that we are staying ahead and, we're not getting any sacrificial bookings if someone announces a concert or there's a local festival that's happening, making sure you have all the tools to stay on top of that as well here. All right. And I do apologize, everyone. I'm sniffling a little bit. I'm sick in 100-degree weather and it's not fun. But if I need to repeat myself, everyone just let me know. So this is going to be more specific data that we're taking a little bit of a deep dive into. We just pulled some random cities. And that being said, if you guys would like us to pull stats on your own, wherever you guys are located, more than happy. Just let me know. It's a quick pull for myself. But what we're seeing first on here is Palm Springs. So we're seeing about 41% average occupancy, which is about, 1 percentage higher for last year in terms of what we're seeing. ADR is up 10% year over year at $396. We can also get more granular with how we're pulling this data. So we can look at luxury. We can look at, premium. We can look at mid-market. It's really up to you guys on kind of what your portfolio looks like. Revenue per available night is up 17%. Booking lead time is at 24 days, and the length of stay is sitting at 3 days right now for the Palm Springs area. Lake Tahoe, we've got about a 36% occupancy on average. That's down 1%, but which is minimal. I would tend to see that sort of kind of make itself up near the end of the summertime too. ADR is up 4% at $359. RevPAN's down about 1%, and it's sitting at 152. And booking lead time sitting around 31 days is what we're seeing on average, with the length of stay similar with Palm Springs of about 3 days, is what we're seeing as well. Now, middle one's going to be Park City. This one, we've got the same trend as Lake Tahoe, so about 1% lower than what we saw last year, sitting at 27%. ADR is down about 6% at 411. Revenue per available night is 161. That's down 12%, and booking lead time's about 40 days in advance with an average length of stay of about 4 days. One thing that I did notice on all of these areas that we're pulling is obviously the longer the length of stay, the bigger of a booking lead time that we're seeing on here. Just means a little bit more planning in advance. I know it's a day of a difference, but that's a weekend versus, during the week with some of these families too, right? So Denver, this is going to be second to last. We've got, averaging same occupancy, what we're seeing year over year, about 67%. ADR's up 2% at 174. RevPAN's up about 3% at 122. Booking lead time is about 20 days, the shortest one out of all we've got. And I'm not surprised about that. I have friends in Denver and I've visited them many times on a whim. And the average length of stay is about 3 days. And last but not least, we have the Outer Banks. I usually look at this as a little bit more on the family oriented. Like my family has gone to Outer Banks every single year for all of our beach trips. And my dad books a year in advance and he doesn't listen to me when I say he's not getting a deal on anything. But that being said, we're sitting at about 39% average occupancy. Average ADR is down about 4% at 334. RevPAN's down 4% at 196. And booking lead time is the highest out of all of the ones that we've covered at 42 days with an average length of stay of 4 days as well. Take a quick pause. Any questions on this one, Kerrie?
No, I don't think so.
Pretty straightforward.
Is this summer specifically or year to date or?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is going to be summer specifically what we're seeing for occupancy. I can also update some of these and do year to date, but I know that this definitely changes once we get into low season versus high season. So depending on where everyone is in their season, this is just what we're seeing for the summer months at the moment.
And then if somebody does request some like data for their region, do you just want them to send you an email or something?
Shoot me an email. Yeah,
okay.
Definitely open to it. I know that all of my information is probably shared somewhere with VRNation as well too. But totally okay to reach out via email and I can set something up so we can look at your specific portfolios too.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, awesome. So this ties into, what are the best operators doing differently? So the first habit is definitely pricing around holidays, events, and, last minute demand. You would be surprised at the amount of people that I still talk to that are doing this manually, which is, totally fine, right? I talk to people that have been running their business for 20 years. They know the industry, they know what's going on. But I think the one thing as supply gets bigger and bigger within the vacation rental space, it's really about being proactive versus reactive. So again, this first point is kind of bringing it home, price ahead of demand, not in reaction to it. So building pricing windows around known demand signals, rather than just adjusting after the fact, keeping up with any pacing charts, keeping up with anything from a reporting standpoint that you have, is going to be really helpful. Second one's going to be treat holidays and local events as distinct windows. So they get their own pricing logic. They're not just treated as an extension of peak season, because obviously we wouldn't want to price the same, I would say July 1st as the same as July 4th, right? Those are very different high demand periods, but it's still technically considered high season. So differentiating those as well. And then capture last minute surges actively. So anything that's staying pretty static based on what your, current pricing setup is, it's not giving you guys much time in your day to say, oh, you manually changing things when occupancy isn't coming in, right? You're manually changing when you're noticing different behaviors. Being able to be a little bit more variable on your discounts or setting up tiered discounts based on occupancy, or just understanding occupancy-based pricing is going to be really helpful as well, just to take the time away from you as well, especially during your high season and summer, to be able to know that like, hey, we're priced right based on what we have from a demand and occupancy perspective as well too.
So with the holidays and like peak events, holidays are a little more like we're in a, mountainous region. So Christmas and New Year's skiing is going to be huge. So we can anticipate certain peak demand holidays, 4th of July. But events kind of come and go. Sometimes they perform better than others, sometimes not. And then even just like shifting markets, Christmas and New Year's this last year for us, rates just kind of softened across the board. And, we were keeping an eye on it because what we never want to do is chase rate down with everyone else. We want to be priced appropriately at the right
Yeah.
booking lead time. Um, and you mentioned like not reacting later, like, oh, wow, this is really high demand. We can increase rates, and you've already kind of sacrificed some bookings. So I guess my question is, you're anticipating a peak period, a peak holiday or event. And so you want to, price accordingly. But if that holiday or event doesn't perform the way that you anticipated, what is the right way to kind of gauge that? And when do you start pricing down so that you're not chasing rate down too much really last minute?
That's a great question. And I think that there is a couple of different things that we can touch on for this one. One thing that I really appreciate about the what Beyond's platform has done is we've now added in events specifically on a pricing calendar. Um, well, we've always done events and we're always tracking them. But now what our team is doing is they're actually tracking the demand that something is driving. So, for example, I've got a client that Memorial Day is tracking really low for demand. All of these like bigger events that people are looking forward to, right? We're already giving you the indicators on where it's sitting from a demand perspective based on where they're located. Now, one other thing that we also take a look at, and this is something that all property managers should be taking a look at, is the search data and the search demand that's happening. So if the listing has, and what that means essentially is understanding, is this listing or my properties being actually looked at for those weekends? What is the demand behind searches that just hasn't bit yet, right? Is there a lot of traffic coming, or is there not a lot of traffic? If there is a lot of traffic, that's a really good indicator to hold rates because people are searching, they're looking, but nothing's happened just yet. Hold out a little bit more. And then on the flip side of it, if we're not seeing a lot of search demand for that weekend and we're getting closer to it, that's a good indicator on, hey, maybe we should adjust the pricing. From the search demand side of things, if there is a lot of traffic and things aren't booking, we usually will tend to kind of tee it up to, hey, let's look at how the listing is being positioned in comparison to other listings. Do we need to update some photos? Do we need to change what the title is on it? Things like that. So then there could potentially be more bites as well, too.
Yeah, and I think this just like speaks even more to why dynamic pricing tools are so important, because even average booking windows change throughout the year in the same market. Your winter booking window can look very different than your shoulder season, than your summer, and so you don't want to price down too quickly if people aren't even booking yet. So
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, that's one thing that we've added into our platform, which I really appreciate is, when you're going to set up your discounts, we'll actually say, hey, this listing, this type of listing, 3-bedroom in this neighborhood are being booked on average 24 days in advance, right? At the
Right.
moment. So that's a really good way for you to understand, hey, maybe I should start tearing out my pricing this way based on the data that we're seeing out there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. The second habit, filling midweek and shoulder season gaps. So being flexible on minimum stay rules. And I know that this is a very touchy subject for whoever is out there. I know some people have to go to the HOA. I know a lot of people have higher powers above, like owners too, right? So obviously take this with a grain of salt, but I do think it's still important to understand is like, adjusting your minimum rules to convert midweek lookers instead of turning them away, right? So this is during midweek. This is during, that lull between high season into low season, but also being able to provide data behind things that could potentially lead to the reason why we're not getting booked, right? So again, being a little bit more flexible gives you a better opportunity, but also being flexible at the right time as well, I think is key to that. So now reworking messaging for shoulder season, yes, the demand's there, but the pitch needs to shift. So one thing that I was looking up as well is like, how do we talk to shoulder season? How do we want to position this to people? And I was about to say I'd be an easy bite. The weather's kind of in that middle phase where it's really nice, but it's not too hot, right? Right now, I'm living in an absolutely boiling weather, and I know all my Florida people are as well too. But being able to say that we're out of that now, come enjoy what we're experiencing too, I think would be great. And then treats shoulder season as a revenue to be one, not something to wait out. Again, I think that there's an area of opportunity, especially as we're talking about capitalizing on high season. Again, capitalizing on shoulder season, capitalizing on low season, making the most out of what you can because, we are a full year. We're pricing out for 365 days in advance. Usually things don't stop unless an owner's staying there for 3 months, right? That's really where we're going to see the variability. That'll give you guys the biggest advantage for not only high season or low season, but the entire year that you guys are managing the portfolios as well, too.
And I guess with looking at like shoulder season and midweek, how does somebody actually tell the difference between, a shoulder season gap that's a pricing problem or a pricing strategy problem versus just like a listing or positioning problem?
Well, and I think that ties back to the question that you had earlier too on this
Mm-hmm.
last side, like, how are we able to tell the difference on when it should be pricing versus when it should be something that we're looking at from the listing level?
Mm-hmm.
And that ties into one thing, it ties into the search data. I think understanding the guest behavior before we make any decisions is probably going to be the most important. Is this a high demand weekend that people are searching before occupancy actually pulls in? And then on the flip side of it, if it is a high search demand weekend, why are we not getting booked? That's really where we'll look to. We have a tool called Listing Lens, which I'm sure everyone has something of this nature that basically analyzes the listing, shows you things or areas that could be improvements to better position the listing in comparison to others, right? And where we would say the Listing Lens side is again, if the search demand is there, but the bookings aren't there, it's a good indicator to say, hey, what can we do to position ourselves better? If the search demand is not there, then that could definitely turn back onto just pricing. It's not as a high demand thing. And that's a good indicator on, hey, maybe we should tweak pricing a little bit as well, too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Last one, habit 3, protecting ADR while growing occupancy. I know that a lot of people will always ask, like, oh, are you more ADR focused or are you occupancy focused? And this is something that I talk about every single day. It's not meant to be a trade-off. It's a good balance. And I think that's why revenue per available night is something that we talk about pretty frequently, because I think that that embodies the whole point of being able to be flexible on ADR, but also not sacrificing too much just for occupancy, vice versa, just focusing on occupancy and sacrificing ADR. I think being able to understand the true value of a home during all these different seasons that you guys are pricing for is probably the most important. And then also being able to back it up with data. So then we're making owners happy. So then we're making whoever you guys have to report to happy, right? But also understanding that it is a balance. Not everything's going to be priced the same throughout the entire year because not every day has the same value. Obviously, we can see we're talking about high season and low season. So just being able to have a good balance between the both and not be stuck on one, I think is also going to be one of the most important rules to keep in mind, especially as we get out of high season and go into low season too.
I think this is where, because numbers can be pretty tricky, and there are those of us that like think in numbers, and those of us that are like, I don't know, like, great, my ADR went up and my rev pan is this, like, what does that really even mean, and what should I really be paying attention to? And all these like interact with each other, right? So yes, like if your ADR is going up but your occupancy is going down and revenue is going down, then like it's because you're probably priced too high. If
Exactly.
your ADR is going down, occupancy is skyrocketing at a faster pace than any other property, and then you're probably priced too low. So there's all these factors, and I think you mentioned RevPan, and so that's where RevPan can kind of tell you the health of the unit with how ADR and occupancy are relating to each other. Um, and is that right, Taylor?
Yeah,
Is kind of what
no,
you're
you're
saying? Yeah.
right. You're right. No, I'm nodding my head. I
Okay,
apologize.
yeah.
I'm
Because I was like, if
listening.
I this wrong, I'm not going to jump to
He's
my
like,
to
hold
part
on,
two.
hold on.
Yeah.
No, no, that's right. You've
Yeah.
got it. You've got
And then
it.
also, as our portfolios grow, is RevPan still the way that you would recommend that an operator looks at the health of the portfolio? Because, again, your revenue as a company can go up, but it's because you onboarded 20 more units. But
Right.
are those units operating the way they should be? Is your portfolio operating the way it should be? So is RevPan still kind of your kind of zoomed out indicator of your whole portfolio performance, or is there another metric you would recommend people look at?
So, as let's say I'm working with someone, we do look at RevPan. Someone's onboarding with us, like
Mm-hmm.
we look at the increase in RevPan, and that's a number that we
Mm-hmm.
really want to look at. We want that
Mm-hmm.
number to be higher than where you were pacing last year. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just tenfold, right? If you're an operator that doubled their portfolio because you took on new listings, and the goal of the portfolio is to push more occupancy because they're new listings, and that's really what a lot of people are doing when they get those listings on.
Mm-hmm.
It's also good information to keep in the back of your head so you're
Mm-hmm.
not like kicking yourself over, oh God, my rev pan went down.
Right.
No, you have a 50% new portfolio that you need to start getting more bookings for and getting that traction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I do think RevPan as a whole for the portfolio gives operators a really good sense on where am I at for the entire year. And I think it
Mm-hmm.
also gives them a good sense on, hey, RevPan's up. And it also helps you understand where you can be more flexible in your pricing in the lower periods versus the higher periods.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at the entirety of the year is also going to be important. But just like you said, you could get more listings and your revenue would go up. That's a true indicator, is if you got more listings and your revenue is not pacing what you did last year. That would be
Mm-hmm.
my one thing to say, hey, maybe we need to look at some other things. But I
Mm-hmm.
would say RevPan should be something that everyone looks at as well, not only at the portfolio level, but also the listing level too,
Yep.
for sure.
And then for your portfolio level, looking at your RevPAR as well, which would be your revenue
Yeah.
per available unit, would kind of give you some
Yes.
overall portfolio health as well.
Yep, yep. And really like focusing in, I think that's one thing that our revenue management team does really well, is not only looking at the entire portfolio, but looking at each unit. I understand that
Mm-hmm.
you could have hundreds of listings, and that's awesome, right?
Mm-hmm.
And me sitting here and
Mm-hmm.
saying, looking at unit level probably makes everyone want to bang their head against the wall because they're already dealing with so much across all the listings. But
Mm-hmm.
getting yourself a tool that makes it easy for you to find these things, I think would be very important as an operator, to make sure that as you grow, you have the tools necessary to keep up with your growth, but also not stunt you as you're growing as well, too.
Right. Absolutely. And I think this is going to be the perfect segue into what you're going to talk about next. But
Yeah.
as just like a little, as we grow too, it's like in some ways you feel like you're losing control. And actually I just had this conversation with with my revenue manager, who's in house, a few weeks ago, where an owner reached out and was like disappointed in revenue. And she kind of instantly was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so sorry. Like, yes, it seems low. Rather than like, and so the conversation her and I had is our pricing was great. He's pacing ahead. He's outperforming his local little market. It's just the market where he's at has softened a little bit. And so they're just rates he
Yeah.
isn't used to seeing. But with our pricing strategy, he's getting the occupancy he needs to actually increase revenue. And what I told her was like, we have to trust our systems and our process and the technology that we have, because it's true that maybe you have not looked at this person's listing specifically in the past couple of months because we have hundreds of listings, but it doesn't mean that we're not doing it correctly, because we have the right technology and the right, resources. And so how do you make sure that as you grow that you're not leaving a listing behind, not leaving an owner behind.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a great question. And I think that as everyone's been evolving and as long as I've been in this industry, making the owners happy, but also I think that there's a fine line between doing everything that they say, but also educating them.
Oh,
Some of
absolutely.
these owners, right, don't have the knowledge that you guys do. And if they did, they probably wouldn't hire anyone to be their property manager, right? It's
Hmm.
one of those things where it's a good balance between understanding what their needs are for the listing specifically in tandem with you understanding what's best as well too. And that's really where
Yeah.
Beyond's taking its platform and really trying to help arm you guys with as much data as possible to basically give them the tools and the information that they need or that you guys need to back up any decisions that are being made, right? And also making you guys more confident and trusting in the tools that you are using, right? To have those conversations and be able to say, hey, this is the data for this neighborhood. But taking it even further, because I think there's a lot of people that look at pacing, that look at market data, that look at neighborhood data. We've been digging in a little bit deeper to understand, like, for example, the first option. I know I brought this up already, but listing lens. What it does is it automatically analyzes the listings and flags actions that need to be taken, right? If an owner gives you a listing that has terrible photos, I've had this conversation with a lot of people. They won't update the listing. They won't do specific things. Instead of you guys saying, hey, this needs to be updated and them taking offense to it, this kind of changes the narrative to say, hey, we analyzed your listing and these are things that need improvements for us to start positioning it better. Because at the end of the day, look, like dynamic pricing, I think, is a very important tool in everyone's day to day. But that being said, there are other things that take into account when a listing is picked versus another one. And a lot of that is the way that it's marketed, the way that it's taken pictures, the way that it's positioned. So being able to have that also in your back pocket to back up any pricing decisions and be able to send it to them and say, hey, here are some updates that we need. I think they're visual learners more than anything. So it's helpful to have that. The second part, which I'm very excited about, is our owner hub. So being able to just automatically send out updates to the owners versus you having to type up an email and send it to them. This really helps give them visibility into the guest search trends, benchmark against the competition, and keep them overall informed with like all of your customized dashboards instead of you guys having to go in. And obviously, the beginning of it takes some time for you to customize what each owner wants because I know everyone's different. We don't want to share all of our information to everyone. But we want to keep everyone happy, but being able to copy this and send it out to the owners automatically, I think is a great step in the right direction to just being transparent with them about what's happening as well, too. The last one, AI. I know everyone is talking about AI. I'm sure everyone's sick of it. But that being said, I think one step that we're taking with AI is doing it in the appropriate way, making sure that we're taking it step by step, and obviously, keeping in mind what's the easiest. Our first step was like, what's the easiest way that everyone's using AI, and it's typing up an email, right? So one thing that we've implemented is our like chat GPT version of AI, which I love it. Naoba is the name of it. If anyone's using Beyond, I'm sure you guys have used it in your platform. But it's a really great way for you to kind of skip the waiting process of asking questions. And for example, I have had someone use it to say, hey, type up an owner email about the performance of this listing. It says, hey, hey, is my minimum stay rules stopping me from getting bookings based on where the listing's located? Um, Being able to give it as much information, right? It's ChatGPT for your portfolio and listings, whatever you want to use it for anything outside of Beyond, it does not work. But that being said, it's really there to help get you as much information as quickly as possible without you having to navigate through everything and waiting for an account manager or support to get back to you. This has been a really quick and easy way for us to get you guys that information ASAP. and not having to put in so much manual work as well up front too.
Yeah, that's great. So the listing lens kind of seems like it gives you kind of flags. That's how you um, can kind of stay hyper focused on specific listings and make adjustments quickly and easily, because it's kind of constantly reviewing the performance of each individual unit. And then your owner hub is how you present to the owner. And you said something about it being automatically. Does that mean that like, would I have to manually create my owner report, or is an owner automatically receiving a report? Is it an option? How is that working?
So it's actually going to be like a live dashboard link that you share with them. So
Oh,
the
I see.
goal right now, how our owner reporting operates is you will click into it, you generate it, and you can export it to an owner.
Mm-hmm.
Now this is actually going to be something that they can click on and see the live updates based on what you've customized for them, right? I know, again, each owner is very different. You have specific listings with owners. Maybe they don't want that all piled together. Maybe they
Mm-hmm.
want them separate. But that being said, this is going to give them a live dashboard to keep updates and with whatever you want to share with them.
Got it. So does that link always work for them then? Is that the idea? They can click on it any time, or just kind of as you're having a
Yeah,
conversation? Okay.
yeah. So it's going to be a live link, which is great. Now, the listing lens, that's going to be an actual checklist that you guys can check off within the Beyond platform to keep track of what's done versus not done as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. That's super exciting and very powerful tools for sure.
Yes, I know owner
Yeah.
conversations have been a big one, so I was very excited about the owner hub that's coming
Yeah.
down the
Yeah.
pipe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, does anybody else have any questions for us or for Taylor, whether it's about Beyond or about revenue management strategies in general? We're happy to, answer anything or reach out to either of us directly. Don't reach out to me. I can't help you there. Reach out to Taylor for Beyond. But if you have questions about,
Yeah.
revenue management strategy or best practices, I'm always available.
And I was going to say, Jerry, I just saw the chat. Now that I'm, not talking so much, I will be in Pawleys Island at the beginning of August. That's also another spot. So very familiar, and I can send you all that data. But I'll get you my contact info as well, too.
Great. Okay. Um, well, that was a fun discussion. Thank you, Taylor. I'm excited to see everything that Beyond is coming out with, and just kind of um, also just talking about revenue management in general. It's such a big part of, what we do,
Yeah,
and can be really overwhelming. So I appreciate that conversation. Um,
absolutely. Thank you for the questions, and I appreciate everyone letting me get on my soapbox. If anyone has any questions, just feel free to reach out.
Great. Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining us, and thank you, Taylor. If you are looking to go deeper and you don't want to miss, like with VRNation, all the resources we have, you definitely don't want to miss our annual VRNation conference. This is going to be next April in Austin, Texas. It's such a great event. It's really just a gathering of short-term rental professionals. There's tons of hands-on workshops, expert panels, and plenty of time to network with people who kind of truly understand this business. Having attended many conferences in my career, this one feels very hands-on and tactical, and I think it's amazing. So if you are not, that's not on your radar, please be sure to try to join us next April. And then if you're not a member of VRNation, it's the perfect time to join. Membership does give you access to all of this exclusive content, early event registration, and then again, our nationwide kind of network of peers. So we're going to see you at the next webinar and hopefully at the conference next year too. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all.